Peter sees the ethics in his industry, right? It doesn't really matter,
Right.
Anyway, sorry, yada yada so much there, but like, how do you cover all of this in 4 episodes? We're already over time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Noah. I appreciate you sitting here with us for this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
I haven't thought.
I never do.
I never will. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you, Noah.
Yeah.
And people
Thank you, Noah.
people can follow you on the internet by you're at your name.
Yeah, Noah Shackman. SHACHTMAN.
Yeah.
Okay. Goodbye.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Joy mongers.
I've seen so many tweets talking about how like we're the flat earthers of the investing world and like all that, but you're crazy until you're not, and that's true of like pretty much everything in life.
This is Egg News
in climates in the United States, yeah, living and expectation is a prison. I read that on a urinal wall.
Okay, let's back it up here. Work on the frame. Let me get this in frame.
First, we must make things that last. This is the way I will begin. This is the way I will end. And this is what Hope for Architecture is about. A couple of things before we get started. I don't speak for a living. And expectation is a prison. I read that on a urinal wall of a Tennessee gas station. Late one night, I thought it was a great example of itself and that we should all exemplify what we profess so clearly. So those are my disclaimers. That said, I've got something remarkable to share with you, and it's really great to be here. I appreciate the student invitation to come and speak to the architectural department of Notre Dame. If not, join us on the hopeforarchitecture.com website and blog. Of course, new media is being called the first draft of history now, so join that conversation if you dare.
Oh, Clay. If only that conversation had ever happened.
What is Hope for Architecture? The boy in the front there is my son, and that's my client's son in the back, and we had them laying brick on the job site of HFA 1, our field test, and it was amazing. They were just watching us and started doing it. So, in one sense, they are Hope for Architecture. In another sense, we're coming up with this dollar for dollar affordable concept with disposable buildings.
So bad at speaking.
Hope for Architecture is an affordable, multi-century alternative to disposable building. It's based on a structural masonry clay brick envelope. And that's really the only change from convention.
Too many words. What he's trying to say, Hope for Architecture was his scheme to brandize traditional building. This is the Shaker construction. This is Colonial Williamsburg. This is every bonded construction project in the colonies is through with brick, stone lintels. You know it when you see it. It looks like nothing else. It performs for 1,000 years. So he's achieved the model here, but is using a bunch of architectural mumbo jumbo to explain it.
It's not about being purist about this, as much as I love that, as much as I appreciate that take on it. It's about coming up with a solution for disposable building and for all the waste that's being created for that. So whenever we can implement convention, we do that because they've sorted out the economic side of that. So as long as we're not compromising life cycle, as long as we know that we're achieving multi-century life cycle, and that we're bringing that at a rate where regular folks can afford it, then we're going to do whatever we can to secure that. And this $70,000 mark for that, there was some pro bono work in there as far as some of these details and stuff, this battering and whatnot. But these were, for the most part, bricklayers that constructed this, not masons. I was the mason there doing some of the detail work, but the general massing of that was done with production house bricklayers. So there's still a large part of that workforce out there that is unemployed. So a small material palette distills expression, keeps process simple. Authenticity allows extremely simple design, and simple design delivers that dollar for dollar affordability within a given market. It's just really remarkable what a vacuum there is in our country for authenticity, and how there is such an identity grab. We're looking for identity everywhere. We're going to great pangs to get to it, and it seems like we're going at it in a lot of the wrong directions when we'd be a little more straightforward about it, and that's what we're trying to demonstrate. Life cycle and economic viability of structural masonry. Historic proof of concept. We know that it lasts. We're not speculating on this. It requires just a very crude and simple application. As I said, the bricklayers, it doesn't require extremely skilled tradesmen to do this.
All correct. He's mentioning that we know that it lasts. By it, he means this building method of structural brick, beams. You know, we know that it lasts because we have evidence of it lasting 500,000-700,000 years in any climate.
And we've come up with the metric for it. The cubic foot is extremely quantifiable and convenient because the triple wide wall is a nominal 12-inch thick wall. So once you can determine that metric, all you have to do is calculate the area of the envelope and multiply that by your metric, and you have a really good idea of what your costs are going to be with that.
Oh God, more architectural building mumbo jumbo speak. Basically what he's saying is because they build walls by the cubic foot rather than by sticks and drywall and everything. In a normal wall, you have all these systems to make up 12 inches or 6 inches of wall or whatever it is. And with this, their wall unit is a cube of brick. So it's easy for them to estimate by the cube of brick for the whole structure. That, I mean, when they estimate a window header, a corner, whatever it is, they're doing it by the cube, almost like a Lego, by the cubic foot of wall area, because the wall is the structure all in one.
And it's scalable. We're in our second iteration of the concept now in Decatur, Georgia. We're building a dwelling that is 3/5 the size of the field test, and we're building it in half the time. So we're really getting our heads wrapped around, you know, how to execute and how to turn it into a production, a scalable thing. The other thing that we're doing that's extremely important to realize is I'm intentionally using tradesmen that I have not used before. So we're trying to show that the concept has handles. We can pick this up, we can carry it to another region, you can pull from the local trade pools and execute the idea. Of course, the higher the price point.
Well, that's no mystery. I mean, you can look at bricklaying manuals from the 1800s, and they describe how many unskilled boys are needed to do a specific task. So even the estimators and managers of the time that were writing guidebooks on how to estimate brickwork by the cubic foot had pretty low expectations of the actual laborers in the field. They're not highly skilled craftspeople. Not to say that the work isn't difficult or necessary, but that they understood that it's more of a chore than it is a something for a highly skilled, or that requires a highly skilled person. Basically, anyone with a pulse can do it.
More detailed it becomes, the more skilled your labor is going to have to be. But we're even talking with people about low-income housing right now. So, but I'll talk more about that later. This is the cubic foot metric. And I have it by the brick and then by the cubic foot.
So this is 12 years ago. It's about double that now. It's about 30. Last year when I did a test model, it was around $35 per cubic foot.
It can range anywhere from $16 to $18, and we'll make this information available. I believe it's already available on.
He never made that information available.
Website. The beautiful thing about this is that when we build a cubic foot of wall, we leave that and we don't come back to it. It's done.
Yep.
It's one step. In the production world, to make that same area of envelope, as many as 10 different trades are going to come back and forth. We want to call them, we'll call them subcontractors. That's better. We'll keep coming back to that area, and they have to be managed. The materials have to be managed. The problems that are associated with all of that, the logistics, all of that have to keep being managed. And that is the way that this works. That's why it is viable. Because we get the question a lot, how on earth could this cost the same as a stick frame house? It's because of all of the processes that are involved with the stick frame house. We did a thermal mass study with Clemson University at the field test in Columbus, and this is a great snapshot of what thermal mass is about. This was about a 3-week period, and these spikes represent days, and the red line, the black lines are exterior wall temperature, and the red line is interior wall temperature, directly across, they're a foot apart. And you can see while we have a 110-degree spike right here, interior temperature 12 inches away is just waffling around 2 or 3 degrees, around 70 degrees. Whatever is happening in the computer modeling for energy with thermal mass is there's something skewed. There's something.
We know exactly. This isn't a question. We know what is happening with the modeling. The modeling for the way that they rate insulation or energy thermal efficiency of products. They've got a couple different. There are 2 accepted tests that are used right now. The most basic and the one that most people use is they get a sample of the material about yay big, like a 1x1 square, put it between 2 hot plates, and measure the resistance. That's one method. And then they build tables and charts, and they record all the different resistance rates for all these slivers of material, and they extrapolate those for thickness. They don't understand that fundamental, the way that they test for thermal efficiency for insulation in buildings discredits masonry, because they can only test a thin layer of it. They're not testing the whole system as a whole. Now, recently, like within the last 10 years, they have done tests on actual built wall units as a whole. That's Robin Pender's work. where they tested the whole width wall, and they showed that, you know, with the hot mix mortar and hand fired bricks or low fired bricks, that those walls perform the best, and they didn't experience an insulation drop when they got wet.
No, is not being calculated properly, and Clemson is on board with this. And we're trying to sort it out. We're trying to actually develop an accurate language for thermal mass, because we know that it works, but really no one can quite explain why it's working on the model.
Robin Pender at Historic England can explain it exactly. They modeled it, they tested it, it's been proven. Right around the same time as this.
Because it shouldn't be working, but it is. It could have something to do with the roof area to mass wall envelope area, and we're going to begin exploring that, because I think that they're relatively close within the model. It's a pretty significant.
So the other reason his walls dip in the rain, let me go back to that chart, because that was actually kind of important. This chart right here. In this modeling, something we're going to bring up later. Gosh, he's telling on himself here, because you'll notice what they're comparing here is the internal temperature, right? Which this is really good performance. The internal temperature stays really consistent, like hovering right around 70. You know, it's up to 75 right here, down to 65 right here, but mostly it's hovering pretty consistent, while the outside temperature swings wildly, you know, throughout the day. So that's what they're showing here is the ability of a thermal mass, like a heavy brick wall, to act as insulation, even though on paper it has no insulating properties. That's the mystery he's describing here. Is they're like, why is this on paper? If you look up brick in your insulation chart, it's got a very low insulation property. In fact, they go through great pains now with brick single layer construction to put insulation behind it and do all this other bull crap just to get one layer brick to the same insulation level as something else. So this dip is important though here. So in a traditional hot mix mortar situation, you would not see this dip on a rainy day. The reason that this dip occurred in Clay's houses is because he's using a weird, non-traditional mortar to glue the whole wall together. We'll get into that more later. Let's get back ahead to where he was. I think we're about a minute.
Within the model, it's a pretty significant roof that's highly pitched, so there's a lot of that roof for that envelope, but we'll be exploring that more.
He's getting lost. All right. Yeah.
So this is the way the envelope is made, and this is a common bond. This is the sort of thing that we'll be building tomorrow in the workshop, and I hope.
A lot of words to say a 3 with brick wall. So it's 3 layers of brick. That's how most of them were made all through history up until like the middle of the 1800s when they started doing veneers.
Many of you that can will attend that tomorrow around lunch out in front of the building. We put a lot of thought into mortars, and
you didn't. This is damning right here. It's the downfall of this entire program. Ultimately, is they have built thousands of brick walls now using this mortar mix or an NHL or some other combination. This is bad. And this is why that wall experienced a temperature drop when it was wet.
Done a great deal of research and exploration working with Margaret Thompson with LaHoist, and there's just a number of folks out there that seem to have given their.
He should have talked to Robin Pender and Nigel Copsey.
It's just a mortar that have played a part in helping us understand. It's a little bit of a difficult subject. Feels a lot like alchemy at times because you never seem to get the straight answer from the.
It's not alchemy, you idiot. You just read the wrong books, Clay. You needed to go to Colonial Williamsburg, see how they make their mortar, see why those buildings perform long. It's not a mystery.
Answer from two people, but you begin to feel your way through it. And this is the recipe that we're using on the current project. And it's
diabolical. So some notes on this. What are they trying to do here? This is like a type S kind of gosh, what is it? Type N or whatever. It's a modified restoration mortar, but they got everything wrong. So for this to be the actual historical lime tempered with Portland, the way that you do this is first you make lime putty. You make that by slaking quicklime. During that slaking process, you're going to add in your pigment to the water to slake the lime to make a colored putty. Then you fold in your sand. Then you're going to add your pause. As you bring that whole thing up to a reaction, then it's applied or it's banked. The thing is, you can pre-mix the putty, sand, and pigment and bank that over or cover it. And then the way that it works is you would pre-mix that to a rough stuff, almost like plaster work. And then when you're laying brick, you would gauge it with Portland cement or crushed fired brick or ash or some other thing to give it some hydraulic properties as it's being mixed for the bricklaying is when you add the Portland. You don't do it any other way.
1-2-5, 1 part Portland, 2 part lime, 5 parts fine sand, 2 parts coarse sand. And in addition to that, we've been using a natural pigment, mineral pigment, that is not to exceed 10% of the cementitious material.
Yeah, if you mix it into the water when you're slaking the lime, you barely need any pigment at all. We just demonstrated this in a video a couple months ago.
Volume. And you can see the difference in our fine sand. This is standard mortar sand. This is cement sand. And you want to have that difference because the fine.
It doesn't fucking matter. Sand does not matter. You wash your earth until you get sand and you have clay removed. You want some silt and some other impurities in the sand. You don't want it to be completely clean. But most earth will bear, subsoil. If you wash it through sedimentation, you have the aggregate that you need for your quicklime mortar. There's no need to hyper focus on sand if you let sedimentation do the work for you.
And can fit in between the larger sand. There's some air entrainment in there that helps the mortar, the lime aspect to carbonate, and it can have play a remarkable part in that, believe it or not.
Nope.
This is the natural color of our pigment that's mined in North Georgia. It comes out of the ground like that. you touch it, it feels like water almost. It's so fine. They heat that and they can change the color of it. And this is where these.
If it's that fine of a pigment, it's probably has some pause qualities as well.
Colors that we're using, and when we color the mortar, we hope that it is never colored the same way twice. We want it to be all over the map in color. The only thing we're trying to avoid is striping. When I tell people that we're doing that it seems like a very strange idea, like it would be something that would really stand out to you. But the people that I don't tell that.
No, so what he's explaining here, he learned a process of small batch mortar making, but he didn't understand the why of that. I just explained the why previously, in that you batch your pigment into the water, you pre-slake all the lime with the sand and aggregate into it, and then you ship it to the wall for use. The masons on the board temper as needed with Portland or other pause materials to control the conditions of that mortar for their bricklaying. They need workability. So he learned half of that lesson from a bag mason that did a lot of production work, probably in the 30s and 40s, where they were using 18th century common knowledge for bricklaying. They were still trying to do small batches. They were trying to control everything on the board with tempering, and that went completely by the wayside with spec mixes through the 50s and into the modern period.
And they come to the job site and they're just blown away by it. They're, wow, this is what's happening here. Why does this feel the way that it does? And then I tell them about the mortar, and they see it, and it works remarkably well. I think it has a lot to do with the way, if you ask
So the mortar that he has chosen and to use for all of these structural walls has about a 50-year lifespan, realistically. And a lot of these buildings, unfortunately, it's real unfortunate because he has every other part of the puzzle right, except for the chemistry in the mortar.
How to draw an apple, and you sit the apple on the table. The first color they're going to reach for is going to be red, and they're going to color in their apple. But if you take someone who understands illustration and understands color, they're going to find blues in that. They're going to find a whole spectrum of color in that. So that's what we're trying to do with walls, and trying to create this very integrated organic fabric that is not just skin deep. This isn't a distressed treatment. What you're seeing on that wall is what goes into the wall. None of that is ever going to wash away or have to be replaced.
Well, it's going to spall prematurely and hold water in the wall because of the pore structure of that mortar. But correct, traditionally built brick walls with hot mix mortars do last a long time. It's just that yours won't.
And this is the difference. Of course, a lot of this is subjective, but
that's correct.
There's something about this that I just really love. I love that earthiness, and I love the unapologetic nature of it. We've eased into this. As I've done structural masonry projects, with each one, we've gotten a little more brave.
Dude, jack off at home.
More brave each project, and it's taken, there's some risk involved, but it's working out. So we've got a wonderful client that's helping us with that. So this is my son in an alley indicator right against the Brick Store pub.
My son.
I'm just wanting to talk a little bit about that earthy nature of what we're doing. In this alley, it's so tight that when the trucks have gone down over the years, they actually scrape the sides of the walls, and even when it fails, even when it's getting messed up, it's getting better. And that's something that just can't happen when it's only skin deep. And of course, this is a ruin that was down in Columbus, Georgia, and they're tearing down this building, and you can see where it's been being adapted along the way. And it's just, even when it's a mess, it's just remarkable. So those are the types of values and things we're trying to tap into when we're building this way, trying to pull back from the unnecessary cosmetics and just be, again, very unapologetic about it and have a very rigorous honesty in what we're building.
I wish you had rigorous honesty, Clay. That would be nice. Expectations are a prison. Yep, well
This
done.
is the finished field test down in Columbus. And I was just going to show you a few pictures here of this. Obviously, it's a traditional building, but we're introducing some elements to try to make it relevant and show that we can take these mediums and reinterpret them a little bit and put our own signature on it and show that brick can be a very sculptural material. Forms like this are extremely teachable. It's amazing how simple this actually is to build. Along the way, we've been doing some filming, and I was going to show you a little 3-minute film clip to give you an idea of what's been happening with the documentary and the field test. So.
I gotta turn down this trash guitar. I cannot stand it. Yeah, it's cute. This is like one of the few videos they ever made. He's living in a little tiny house, walks over to the job site, starts laying brick. Yeah, that's how you do it. You live on site and you do the work. No notes with this. He just got his chemistry wrong on the mortar. Like, everything else is correct. This love for her will stand where I stand. You can tell because there's no steam coming off of the mortar. If it's hot mix, there's steam coming off of that when you add the... They use the crane just for one day, lift the beams in place. The rest of it's human-powered work. Roll like she wrote to me. We're getting some real Townsend vibes here. Oh, we got the Tuck Everlasting moment. Yep. All solid movements, just bad chemistry on the mortar. Everything else is correct. The dog by the door, my dad's gone. I could do without the decorative chimneys. There's no need for a goddamn chimney. They're fun to build. Just no need for them. Well done. Except for the mortar gluing the whole thing together. Yep, there you go. That's the problem. pretty standard practice. It's very similar to land slate. It's just there's a added component of the wet work. And no hand nailing.
So yeah, we're
Okay.
trying to do a documentary about it. We're still sorting out the direction with that, but obviously we want to use
He never made that documentary.
that to help people understand this process and to get other people to build this way. We're not looking to franchise. We're not looking to said. Had people say, "Well, you got to patent this." It's like, well, come on, it's been around for a long time. But yeah, if we're serious about making the world a better place, we just want to share it. We just want to figure out the most efficient way to do it and the most inexpensive way to do it, and to give that to other people. And I think what's going to be happening over the next couple of years is we'll be actually developing a catalog of videos that step by step show you how to build this way. And that will be on our website, and it will be free.
Clay, it never happened. There is a catalog of instructions on this way. An architect in Canada in the 1800s wrote several books on the topic, Fred T. Hogston. Available at Trad Roofing and Trad Building for free.
Because if we're greedy, we're being greedy with our future. So yeah. Let's talk about the market. This Patagonia jacket was in the New Yorker, and it just really grabbed me. It reminded me of an old Volkswagen ad back in the 60s where it showed a Volkswagen and above it said lemon. And it was a really effective way of marketing. But we're really the world is changing at such a fast pace in the way that we value and our concerns.
He is one of the worst speakers I've ever had to endure. It's truly embarrassing.
For the environment and so forth, and it's showing it. This Patagonia ad is great. That's a Patagonia jacket. Right below it are all the stats that it's taken environmentally to create that jacket, and they're just trying to be responsible about that. Interesting stat. I'm wondering if any of you have heard this. And since 2006, there have been no indoor malls built in the United States.
The guy that made pitons.
I was speaking at a brick industry forum. A lot of people there involved in the industry. I didn't really trust that stat. So before I just stated it as if it were so, I asked them, because surely it was the largest industry conference in the country. And so I just checked with them then. Have any of you heard of a mall being built in the country since 2006? Not a hand was raised. And that's just very strange to me. You can't argue that the market isn't changing and that the way that we look at our built environment isn't changing if something that was such a huge part of our culture is gone. It's just, when I grew up, the mall was something that everyone went to,
Oh my God, he's having a vaporwave meltdown. He's doing like mall nostalgia. This is weird. My man got lost.
Periodically throughout the year, and now they're on their way out entirely. So that's the sort of thing that made me begin to realize, of course I didn't have that stat at the time, but there was an intuition involved that, yeah, there are people out there that are interested in new ways of building. And I started noticing the studio lofts and all of the reclamations, and this is something that really indicated that that this idea might work.
So Clay, the reason that those old brick walls are standing is because of hot mixed mortars. That's what you missed.
Of building houses strictly out of brick. So this is the brick store pub indicator. On this is the original plastering on the wall there of a structural masonry wall, and here on this side they've taken it off. And what I was saying before is where we are going with this. But if we look back, we can see sort of some of the same things. These are some townhouses in Charleston. Incredibly simple design. Could almost be little factories, but they're houses from the 1700s, and they're just beautiful. And there was someone there working on them. This guy on the ladder, and he let me.
Those walls all work well because they were built with hot mixed mortars. The opposite of what you did, Clay.
Back in between them and go into the back of the house and have a look around, and look what can happen around a structural masonry building. With a regular building, you'd be worried about it rotting away. Look at how beautiful and what a very enchanted place that is, that we can't have with conventional building. So it was such a treat to be out on the street and see that pretty bland look, and then step back there and have a look at that. These are brick that I found on our job site. This is an old Virginia brick. This is actually the brick that we're using to build with right now. But I found all of these brick on our job site, and it's a great example of how economization happens and how we get to where we are with building. Obviously, you couldn't have gone from this brick to that brick. People wouldn't have stood for that at the time. But as we transition, small steps before we can realize something is abnormal, we're used to it. And that's kind of how we land in the place that we are.
Clay, you summarize a whole century of craft labor struggling against industrialization with a whimsical, oh, look how things have changed type thing. There's actually a story there. There's a thesis and antithesis.
So solid brick, frog brick, this is what we're using. Here's a braver frog. You can see they're wanting to go through the brick, but they don't quite have the nerve yet. Here they start punching through the brick, but look how small the holes are. And here, finally, you get to hole. There's more hole than brick. And then.
So the difference between the holy bricks are extruded in a machine. The solid bricks are normally hand thrown, or they're tray. The first innovation was tray processing. So it used to be you would hand throw a brick into a mold, take it out, put it on the ground, let it dry, put it in the kiln. In the early industrial era, they invented all sorts of ways to automate that. And one of them was tray processing. So rather than a man throwing a single brick in a mold, you would have an implement that takes a ball that was still hand portioned by a person and spreads it into like 4 or 5 or whatever. The next step of that was the extruder, where it's literally just where you're feeding a slurry or a pug mill consistency into the extruder, and it's shooting out a line of clay, and then you are cutting it this way. That happened with a lot of bloodshed and turmoil in the battle between the brick makers and the industrialists over about a century.
Let's make it narrower, and now they've got thin brick coming, and pretty soon brick will come in a can of paint. So I'm going to augment what she was describing about how I got into this and how this idea evolved just very quickly. I have a fine arts background. I wanted because I haven't studied architecture per se formally.
We're gonna skip.
And I wanted to give you some idea of how this has happened. So this is some oil paintings that I'll just push through very quickly. Is that intaglio's print on the right? So we went from there and built this. Just the planets aligned for us. I mean, literally, as I had the idea, the opportunity came up to do it. Our videographer, Mark, in the back here, who did the film clip that you saw earlier and has done all of our documentation, he was available and totally as much part of HFA as anyone, has only contributed his effort.
My God.
And yeah, so we had this great chance to do this, but you can see that I was still
Like
having
Blair
trouble
Witch
drawing back
Project.
from the detail. How far can I pull back on that and still have a successful building? Not only that, when you can do those things, you want to do those things, and it's just hard to hold back sometimes. But you can see that this is quite
Justin
different
makes
from
me feel good.
those buildings that I'd been doing before. And normally we would have spanned all of these openings with arches, and we've used these granite lintels. And for instance, example of cost, this granite lintel cost about $48. To do that in steel would be 3 times that.
Yeah.
In 20 years, you're going to have a maintenance issue, and it doesn't deliver the aesthetic of the stone. So you don't see that in regular building because it's a
He's right on that. That's a great lesson. So he's just explaining how these granite lintels, all of these lintels are just a regular ass stone set through the wall. And then they put the window frame in there. There's no steel lintel in there. There's no goo tape. There's no sealant. There's no caulking. There's no nothing. It's just a granite lintel holding up the brick. Simple as. Which, yeah, that's the correct way to build.
We've used these granite lintels, and for instance, example of cost, this granite lintel cost about $48. To do that in steel would be 3 times that. In 20 years, you're going to have a maintenance issue, and it doesn't deliver the aesthetic of the stone. So you don't see that in regular building because it's a 500-pound stone, and it's going to cave the wall in if you put it up there. But the reason that I'm showing these two houses together is to really clearly show how much further the detail can be drawn back and still be satisfying the life cycle and the affordability aspect of it. So, what if we're doing a 5V10 on this, but just doing it larger? I believe we can get to that $80 to $100 a square foot price point. We're satisfying this in a $150 square foot market. It's an upper middle class market. So, but you have to remember, we started with that. We're used to doing that. And I just wanted to show you, I use SketchUp a lot, and this is an animation that I did of the current project that we're on. And I'm just convinced that doing these animations is such an effective way to communicate the deliverables to the client.
Okay, I love this animation because it does show the wall sequence, but again, telling on yourself here, buddy, you did all of the substructure in poured concrete. So we know that only lasts like 100 years at best. So it's fake. The substructure should just be stone or brick.
I watch this and I know what's going on, and I watch this and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. So have a look at this. The SketchUp is I used the free version of this. This didn't require the professional version. It's just amazing to me that you can create something like this with free software. But you can imagine how for lay people, for clients who don't do well with 2D drawings, how much easier it is for them to be able to wrap their heads around that. And I'm sure that you guys are doing animations and stuff a lot, but I think it's a really powerful medium. So this is the building that's 3/5 larger than the field test. That main front rectangle, that's the same size as the field test, and we pushed out at the back and on the side. So this is what we're building in half the time that we built the other one. Up until this job, the most masons I'd ever had on a job was 3, including myself. On this job, we've had a crew of 10 masons, not counting the laborers. And it's just incredible how much they can do in a day.
The market is 800 brick a day. Last time I checked the market insurance rate.
This is our lot size. We have a really wonderful infill lot in the city of Decatur. It's 80 feet wide, allows us to have that eave facing front rather than a gable. It really does the concept justice in terms of its curb appeal and presence. This is the current project that you just saw the animation for. So I just wanted to show you where we are right now. We're not quite finished with the envelope, but we're getting there. This is what happened in Atlanta on Monday. The trees all budded out. Not quite doing that here. But you see arches like this is a 14-foot spanning arch. To make the form for that, it's really not difficult. I don't understand why we don't see it going on more. It's such a beautiful element of the building. It's really pretty simple to do. Someone this week stopped by the job site and asked if we were building a church. I wish that I'd said yes. And I still, I just can't get away from it. I love this idea of the brick peeling away from itself and that really nice shadow line going to a hairline there. So the battering of that relief is it's got a slight radius, about a 1-inch rise. It's like a 200-foot radius, really, really slight, but you realize it. It's just barely there. And there's that entry hood again. This is looking through one of the wood vaults of the upstairs fireplace. That's our crew leader there. And then I'm kind of backing up from the progress now, just to give you an idea of how this has been constructed. This is Patrick Lemon. He's our lead apprentice. And he's up there. You can see we've got the form in place and we're getting ready to take that out. And I like to lay the brick and right after laying all the brick, take the form out. Because what that does, this is the way that I see it, is that while that mortar is still malleable, it will squat slightly and remove some inherent weaknesses in it.
He talked about alchemy earlier in bricklaying. This is bad. So we lay the arch, we give it 48 hours for the carbonation period of the lime, and then you take out the form. Simple as.
I haven't had one fall yet. So I'm just going to keep doing it until they fall. This is the fireplace, and you saw some fireplaces earlier, and the fireplaces are the handicap of the concept. But we've got...
It's your handicap because you can't get over making unstilted arches. And it's cute, but we don't need it. Nobody needs that Game of Thrones ass chimney. Nobody.
To a place, that's the only part of what we're doing that's not really scalable. You're not going to be able to find tradesmen out there that can execute a fireplace like that. But I would very much like to partner with Isokern or Fire Rock or some of these companies that take a pumice-based material and make it a stackable unit that you brick around.
Why do you need a chimney?
Pretty nice alternative to building a full masonry
For what,
fireplace.
bro? Are you King Arthur?
And just ironically, we have the OSB house being built next door. That was just a gift from God. And these are some local folks that just were walking by, and
I know black people.
to work with the community, and what we're doing is about it. It fits so well into new urbanism, and it's about
New urbanism is Nazi shit, straight up. Andres Duani is a fucking Nazi.
Stewardship and
God.
being responsible with the way that we build and the what we leave our children. And I started talking with these ladies about that, and it just resonated with them so well. They spoke about
Clay left this noble pursuit to go build on a lake resort community in the middle of the Ozarks. Yeah.
the working class houses that have been there for 50 years, or since the 40s rather. And they spoke about them as if it were a given that they were not going to last very long. They understood it. They really appreciated the idea of stewardship in particular. So, and we had a visit a couple of weeks ago from Andreas. He came
Nazi.
speak on lean urbanism in Atlanta, and we were his first stop. Yeah, we had a great time. That's Scott Ball on the right, and the folks from Hampstead behind him there.
Who cares, bro?
While he was there, he said he and Scott both independently had come to the conclusion that I had been channeling H.H. Richardson, and that I was a redneck Richardson.
Dude, they're insulting you.
I said, who is Richardson? Another case in point. Yeah, we had a really good meeting. And it was Andreas.
Richardson? Richardson looks like the dragon tamer guy from Harry Potter. He's like this crazy 19th century wizard guy that did romantic revival architecture. He was the good God, you could do a whole series on Richardson. Nutcase and criminal of architecture. Truly one of the greatest criminal perverts of architectural history.
We later went to a local eatery pub that actually my client owns. We walked to it from there, and there was an old mass wall behind him, and he was the one that said, this fails and it gets better. And it's a great way to look at the materials and how we apply them. And I had to have a picture of H.H. Richardson.
There he is. This motherfucker. Look at this guy.
I mean, he looks pretty channelable, right? So that's all I have.
He's giving Bo from Bo is Afraid right now.
So I said I would begin and that I would end with, first, we must make things that last. And let's open up the floor for any questions.
Oh, that's gonna
Yes,
get
sir.
dumb.
Thank you for this presentation. This really really quite amazing, quite wonderful. I was asking two questions.
Yo. This guy. Hold up. He looks like a villain from Beverly Hills Cop. Oh, I am the...
Okay. Really quite amazing, quite wonderful. I was asking two questions. One is about the type of bricks you're using, or whether you are using bricks which are kind of common on the American market, or is it recycled bricks, or are you producing yourself your bricks like originally it was done on every building site in the south or even here? People were kind of excavating the clay, doing
on-site brick making.
on-site brick making.
We're not doing that. We may do that eventually, but
You'll never do that.
we're having to get there kind of incrementally. We're using bricks that are on the market. But it's an interesting question because we refer to clay brick masonry mass walls as if they're all the same, as if the brick are all the same, and they're not. And the way those mass walls are made are not the same. I told you that I brought in new tradesmen for this job. And when I explained to them how to build the mass wall, on one of the lower level load-bearing walls, there was a triple wall. And on that middle Y, they just started stacking brick in there without any mortar. And they didn't, they're veneer masons. They didn't understand that they were doing anything wrong. And that was one of the things that led me to.
He got completely off topic. The guy was asking about types of brick and whether you're hand making them, and then he's getting into like how modern masons don't understand like medieval era practices. Of course they don't.
To the conclusion, I need to do a 5 to 10 minute bilingual video on how to build a mass wall. This is how you do it. This is why you do it this way, and get everybody on the same page. And that's the sort of thing that would be available online for other people that were interested in doing this. But yeah, you look at a mass wall, someone's in a building, in a mass wall building that said, oh, it was burning up in the summer. That's not a viable way to do this. You don't know what's on the inside of that wall, or how it was made, or how effectively it was made, and or what the composite of the brick was, or, so great question.
Second question is about
Great question that you didn't answer.
trade regulations, because I know that in many places people wouldn't allow, or I don't know what the conditions are, but I know that some people say we can't do this here because it's earthquake. Whereas in Europe, they do it even in earthquake region. They build load-bearing brick buildings at the. There have to be certain spans. We have to have intermediate walls, so you can't have wide spans and so on. Can you build everywhere like that in the United States?
Well, no. Structural masonry is pretty notorious for not doing well in seismic zones, but
sort of. There's a limit to this. So structural masonry can perform in earthquake zones if you lace it within timber framing. They do this in Turkey. They do this in Japan. There's a fine tradition for 1,000 years of building hybrid timber frame structural masonry buildings in areas where the ground shakes a lot.
But they are in Europe in seismic zones, and they've been there for centuries. So that certainly deserves exploration. But again, those are.
It was already explored, bro. You need to read your books. They explored this in the 90s. There were all these earthquakes in Turkey, and they figured out why the old buildings lasted while the concrete ones fell down. And they figured out, oh, it's because they were laced in timber frame. It was structural masonry laced in timber frame.
That we need to grow into. Right now, we've just got to get our feet wet and show that it's successful. And then when it gains notoriety, popularity, then expand. If we can't stop disposable building, we want to put a dent in it. So. Yes.
The house was done on the infill lots, showed we couldn't done on the quarter foundation. Did anything have to be done for differential expansion? It's a small size,
Yeah, nothing's done with that. You know, if cracks happen in this, you don't care. Yeah.
Hold up. He's saying if cracks happen, we don't care. That's not right. There aren't any cracks through the building envelope in those buildings in Charleston or Colonial Williamsburg or at the Shaker properties.
There's cracks in buildings, so what? You know, it's a wonderful building.
No, your buildings are cracking prematurely because you used the wrong mortar, Clay. That's why.
It's again the unapologetic honesty, the rigorous honesty. You know.
You haven't been honest. I have been confronting you about this for 10 years. And you say, I have a business to run. Okay, what does that have to do with intellectual honesty?
But those are, for me, you know, you see the expansion joints on large commercial buildings where, again, when something is counterfeit, it has to be perfect. It can't afford scrutiny because it's not real. You know, look all over the building, you know, when it's real, often since you can afford it. Yes.
Oh my God, he is so nervous.
Or as you arrive at some of the brick patterns you have used to line your walls, are you more playful with them, or have you looked at other buildings that do similar things?
Now, are you talking about the bond or the color or the bond?
So I saw on some of your buildings that there are areas of the wall that you turn the brick diagonal.
Right.
So those kinds of patterns.
And we're actually going to show tomorrow how to build that and why it's built that way. That's called common bond. It's not intended to be decorative. It's in other words, you have each little wall of brick is called a wall. So you have 3 walls that are independent of one another. So every 6th course, you have to tie those walls together. So you turn the brick perpendicular to the wall. It reaches into the middle brick. It doesn't reach the outer brick. So whenever you see, that's called a header course. And wherever you see that opposite.
He's explaining English common bond, which if these people were in architecture school, they should have learned that like their first day.
The other side of the wall, either above it or below it, is a header course on the interior so that you get that contact that unifies the entire wall. So this is one of the more economical ways to build a mass wall. Probably something that's more structurally sound would be a Flemish bond, but it's going to cost more. You know, there's more thinking involved in the production of it. So does that make sense? Yeah. Go ahead.
What kind of interior finish do you put on a residential house like that? You mentioned thermostats, so these are climate controlled.
Oh, absolutely.
And how does that, is there an interior insulation, or you're just allowing the thermal mass to protect the air conditioned spaces from
That's right. Yeah.
leading out to the heat?
Oh my God, look at this villain from 24. This looks like a guy that like this Palomir weirdo. Whoa, look at the fucking hairline in the back. Oh my man. This is an ugly audience. Oh my gosh. So he's lost in the sauce because he's studied those tables for thermal mass over and over again.
Along the envelope, the brick is exposed, and then all the partitioning is just conventional framing and drywall for reflective surfaces, and that is what it's serving. I spent the better part of this past summer putting together a 90-page permit submittal to establish precedents for this building model through a fairly difficult building department. Now, they're progressive, you know, but they're you're going to dot every I and cross every T, and they're going to, turn the screws a little bit.
So you just have a furrow then? Frame?
No, the brick's exposed.
On the interior.
On the interior, the brick is on the interior of the envelope. And then all the adjoining partitioning, abutting partitioning is just conventionally stick framed and drywall.
Do you have moisture coming through that wall?
And I get asked a lot about moisture. It's just never been an issue. For one,
It is an issue. His first graph showed that it's an issue. On rainy days, the temperature dropped because the walls sucked a bunch of water in. It's only been 12 years. And in those 12 years, we've seen issues with Clay's first test models spalling, having interior moisture issues, stress cracking, all the things you'll see from a brick building with a poor mortar chemistry.
you have some thermal breaks within that wall. It's not like concrete where the concrete is so highly conductive. The clay brick masonry is not conductive like that. We try to leave.
No, your clay brick masonry is conductive because of the mortar chemistry. You have pores in your mortar that are similar to concrete that conduct water into the wall rather than pushing it out.
Collar joint's fairly open, so you've got the two thermal breaks there in addition. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that because that's a kind of preconception about modern wall building, that people think that if you don't have insulation, if you don't have an artificial insulation, the wall is not insulated. Whereas the normal brick wall, it's a breathable. I think what's very important is it's a breathable also.
They're still stuck on their training. All these people have been trained to view brick as a low thermal conductor, and that's true, except for brick walls that are made with hot mix mortar. And those type of structures predate the architecture and engineering trades on whole. That's why they're all confused.
Use light water rather than Portland. So the whole wall breathes, and so if moisture comes in, it goes out again. It's a very normal, slow, natural process where
You're absolutely right. And again,
he's absolutely wrong. So in a properly built brick wall with hand-fired bricks and hot mix mortar, most of the moisture only penetrates like an inch into the wall and the pore structure, and then it's expelled immediately because the pore structure is all a single array of 1 micron pores. The bricks are a little more dense, ever so slightly a little more dense, and they have capillary paths from cracking that bring the water back into the joints, and then it's expelled through air pressure from the inside.
It's a little difficult to explain, but you do a blower door test on this, and it's going to rank really high. There's not going to be any infiltration, but at the same time, it's the sense of the building being able to perspire almost. It's not in a Ziploc bag. There's something.
Well, yours are in a Ziploc bag because the pore structure of your mortar is huge pores and tiny, tiny, tiny pores that form capillary paths in and out. So it's more like a sponge.
Even though you don't have the infiltration, there's something that's happening there where the building does seem to be able to breathe, like you say. Yeah, really important point. That idea of that Ziploc sort of containment. It just sounds.
They're correct. Like the Ziploc, the great coat theory of a membrane over the building is wrong. It should be a building fabric, but it should not be made of shitty mortar. If you build a brick wall with hot mix mortar, it performs, it stays warm and dry, it stays cool in the summer, full stop.
It's
stuff that is emitted by
oh, the off-gassing, yeah. Oh, we didn't use any composite materials, any kind of strand board or plywood, nothing with, well, this is a big laminated beam, but aside from that, there was, we'll probably use some Advantech on the floors of the current project, but the floor system is going to be 18-inch open web trusses.
The whole foundation that this building is sitting on is a synthetic material that was invented in the industrial era for quick construction. Yeah, it shouldn't be sitting on a poured concrete foundation.
So it's all straight wood. So.
Yes, sir. Yeah, just one last thing on this, on Patrick's comment. I think it's actually the insulation which prevents the wall from breathing and which creates the humidity problem, because then you need to add other layers, other materials to balance the damage.
Well,
this guy is insufferable. Oh my God. He must sell insulation on the back end.
That realizing the holes in stick framing and plugging them and continue, and then as we progress and become more thoughtful about what we're doing, realizing more holes and plugging those holes, and each time we're backing ourselves into a corner, and then we built an entire economy in front of us where we can't get out of this corner. It's impossible. So
yep, you walked right up. You walked right up to it, Clay. You were there. You could have identified the culprit. You were right there.
Theory advances funeral by funeral. Yes, sir.
All right. Now, just a question. Okay, so much of this room is talking about gravity, because some of the professors were basically saying they've been taught in Rome and other parts of their career about living walls and how to sort of masonry and all this stuff, so they've been exposed to it. The other professors are actually pretty cool also. They're great people. But they're about to graduate, right? And so much of this room, what advice would you give them about in the system?
In terms of pursuing what we're doing?
In terms of, yeah.
I would advise them to pursue what we're doing.
Oh, this is cute. So this is actually really good. I couldn't understand a word of what he said, but what he's basically asked is, he identified the culprit here and said, okay, well, you made all these claims that we can build simply and we don't need all this, everything that we've learned. How do we do this? That's what he's asking here. In that questioner is asking, if all of this is true, how do we as architects do what you're doing?
In terms of pursuing what we're doing?
In terms of, yeah.
I would advise them to pursue what we're doing.
What if they get in trouble? Basically, he's saying like Clay is telling them to leave architecture school and go lay brick to learn how to do what he's proposing here.
This is not how we do things. But you know how to get standard details through the building department. I mean, is there no friction between you and the rules?
Sure. There's a lot of friction. But when these guys imagined themselves being an architect, they didn't imagine themselves being in a big firm. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of them.
So the advice is don't go to a big firm.
So your advice is don't join a big firm. No, motherfucker, what he's telling you is to go like labor and learn the craft that you're specifying.
I get contacted so often by architects saying, literally saying, how are you doing this? This is what all of us want to do. How are you doing this? I'm working really hard.
He's doing that.
I love it. So that's how I do it. I do it. I'm sorry.
Are other masons or bricklayers getting excited about this work as well, or did they see you as sort of a competition?
If you come out tomorrow, you're going to meet a master mason that's incredibly excited about it.
So you asked if masons see you as competition. No, there's no such thing as mason in the United States in the 21st century. We have union spec brick masons that do veneer to contract specs. That's what they're trained to do. There are no masons. There are outliers that do stone cutting and stone masonry. It is a black box for the architecture trade.
There's a local guy here. His name's Fred Nowicki, and he's amazing. He's a storehouse of masonry knowledge. He's right here in your backyard. I would encourage the school to figure out a way to use this guy because he would help you immensely. But he's great. He's eccentric and loves brick, and so he's very excited about it. But I wanted to mention earlier, we're being imported into Oklahoma to a new urbanist community called Carlton Landing. It's a DPZ design and 1,500 acre, 25-year build out. It's just become its own municipality.
That's the lakefront community. It's all for like rich white people. He's gone.
And the town founder wants to partner with me on an academy where we would bring in
fuck someone that calls himself a town founder. First off, that's diabolical.
And novice and apprentices, and create a small short course campus where we can begin teaching how to build this way.
Did you do that, Clay? Did you open up that campus?
So that would also, as that develops, that might be an outlet for learning how to do this. But again, we're going to develop these videos, these how-to videos, and just keep in touch with us. I'm more than willing to help.
Expectation is a prison.
Yes, sir.
Is triple white kind of your minimum for a structural wall in the house?
In climates in the United States, yeah, barring Hawaii, you need that mass. You really do. And I'm speaking from just my gut there,
Triple width is the standard. You can go to 4 width for taller structures and northern climates. But yeah, it works in the tropics. It works in St. Petersburg. So that's good enough for me.
Like if I suspect that we get a lot of blowback on what we're doing not working in the north. But a mason in Wisconsin recently contacted me and said he did a quad Y building that is very comfortable, and that's always sort of been my intuition that when you go in that colder climate, just add a Y, then it's probably going to be okay. So yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about the how you sort of got as fast as your building department at where you built your prototype?
Yes. And there was a tactical element to that. Well, keep in mind.
They're asking how you did this because it's essentially illegal to build this way in North America under most building codes.
That the Dalton house that I had built in a historic district of Decatur, the same community, that was really successful, had won some awards, and that was where I had kind of gone through my hazing with the city. When a new builder comes in, they're going to, until they get to know you, they're going to kind of show you who's boss. And especially in a historic district, I had to go through 4 different hearings, and the historic district really caused a lot of problems. And then the HPC gave me Design of the Year award, and that's how it works. But so they were familiar with me. They knew that I cared about what I was doing, that I wasn't just a hit and run sort of builder, and I was in it more for just the profitability. So that said, when we had the idea for the field test and we were in design, I went to the city and I said, hey, I'm going to go to Columbus for however long, and I'm going to field test this. And the idea is to show that it'll work and bring it back to the city for infill building here. And, I went to the main guy in the building office. I went to the city planner. I had a relationship with them, and they said, okay. So as it became more and more successful, I kept them abreast of what was happening. And then a fairly influential citizen approached me about building the house that I'm building now. And when that time came, and oddly enough, how often in your life do you say, I want to do this, this, and this, and this, and then this will happen? And that's exactly what happened. It was remarkable. So I said I was going to go try it. And then I said I was going to bring the idea back to the city. And then lo and behold, that happened. So, I had always made the city feel like they were a part of it long before it ever approached, and you've got to negotiate that and maneuver that. And at the same time, be genuine with them, If you're honest and you care about what you're doing, and they get a sense that you're truly concerned about the community, they'll work with you typically. And we had for the energy code, that was the big problem. We had to use the performance-based res check to get through that. And I just right out of the gate, I went and hired a consultant just so that we had all our ducks in a row and he could confirm all of our numbers. And we pushed through it and established precedents. So, yes.
In some of the slides, you were talking about how you were learning the masonry trade. And then from the next photographs we saw had some really beautiful detail and ornament in them. And I was just wondering how and where you learned some of the really interesting details in image and brick.
Oh, I just started laying brick. I just thought I would draw it. I would, I could illustrate, and had a good sense of composition. And
this architecture student is asking how he learned to corbel brick. You draw it. You should have learned this. Like, this should have been your first year, honey. You read Hodgson. You'd learn how to corbel brick and read a brick scale. Simple as.
Again, I've been doing buildings and understood massing. The only difference was I just had this new medium that I had to translate into for me, I was taking building material and translating it into a sculpting material. But
it's additive.
Even then, I was just so surprised why more people didn't do that. It has so much flexibility. And
because it's dangerous, Clay. The reason that people don't do this is because you failed history of the last 200 years. There's a very specific reason why people don't build in brick. It's because they can't make money doing it. You can make money building wood houses and selling suburbia. Building in brick, you build at cost, and your ancestors, your heirs inherit the value.
Curvilinear nature, you can just do whatever you want to do with it. You can helix with it. You can do it.
Have you found that it's easy to teach some of that to some of your other?
Well, yeah. When we began that project, I was the only one that entered in on it, having ever laid a brick, and I had just learned to lay brick on the last job. I brought two apprentices with me. One was from they were back in the same town that we had done that stable, but one was from Wisconsin, the other was from Indiana, actually. And they had never laid brick. By the time we were done, they could do about 95% of what I could do. Yeah. Yes, it's extremely teachable. It's simple. It's just muscle memory. There's little tricks.
He's right about that. Bricklaying is simple. Once you get into a rhythm, you have a tender, you just stick and pull. Oh gosh, what do they call it? Pick and dip. That's what it is. There's a German poem for it. Pick and dip, pick and dip, pick and dip.
It's not like carpentry where you can, anybody can get out and kind of pick up a hammer and drive a few nails and contribute. If you got to know how to do it. There's skills that have to be learned, but once you learn them.
I suppose this is sort of a little JD's question, but a little bit of semantics. Would you consider yourself a master builder or a mason?
And this is a really difficult.
He said, would you consider yourself a master builder or a mason? Okay. So, master brief is a German. Well, Germany didn't exist until, it did. But the lands of Germany, in between France and Bohemia, master brief and Zimmerman were protected guild titles. Mason was both a family name and a term of recognition, like in the way that union members now will refer to each other as brother, like, oh hey brother, even if it's a woman, it's like, hey brother. In the same way, that mason was a term of recognition amongst those in the guilds of Zimmerman and Copignon around the 15th century.
There's not a good title, because if I call myself a builder, think about what a bank calls a builder. Builders don't even own tools now. If they had them, they wouldn't know how to use them, and they're called builders. So when I call myself a builder, I'm putting myself in that category. If I call myself a master builder, I just sound like a moron. So I don't know, I'm a builder. Stick with that. Yes.
When you're putting together the cost per square foot or cubic foot to compare these to contemporary buildings going up, are any of those costs kind of factored into like the multi-century lifestyle? Like, because this kind of building, at least from what we're learning here, is more economical over that span of its life.
Well, it's more economical anyway.
Okay.
Correct, if you use the right mortar, Clay. If you use the correct mortar and put your buildings on a real foundation, they would be economical over hundreds of years.
What I'm saying is that it costs the same per square foot as the disposable building. In our village of Oakhurst,
you make disposable buildings, Clay, because of your mortar. But if you had the right mortar and foundation, you would be correct.
City of Decatur, the going rate can range anywhere from 125 to 200 a foot. So we at 150 a foot, we're being really, really competitive. We're absolutely being competitive with what's being built there and building for the same price.
Are you trying to kind of change people's mindsets though with those numbers and say like on the ground level, our numbers are comparable, but over the lifetime of the building's going to last longer?
Yes, that was the whole premise for the historic preservation movement, was that these things last longer over time. We did this. Where did you go to class, honey?
So you're not rebuilding?
Right. But then we're getting into the thing that we're really after. We're really after a better built environment that's going to require.
Yes, pre-capitalism, pre-industrialism, the architecture establishment.
Over the long haul, much less resources. When you start trying to consider the carbon footprint and the, all the problems with brick, you have to consider also how much that's diluted when it's spread out over 10 times the normal life cycle of a house. So all that.
Right. He's trying to like offset all of the energy cost in his half traditional buildings because they still have all that concrete and all the brick and all that. He's saying, well, yeah, as long as it lasts a long time, it's worth it. But yours won't last a long time because you used the wrong mortar.
Bodied energy that comes with building it, it's just not accurate to look at it in the span of a human life, which is.
Well, yeah, if you used hot mix mortars, that would, everything you're saying would be correct if you had the right mortar chemistry.
Really how we gauge how long buildings should last right now. Buildings should last about as long as a person lasts. Somehow that's satisfactory.
No, they should last like 21 generations, not as long as as long as a person lasts is like 70 years. That's a failed building.
Hey, it's a real honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and
All right, that was Clay Chapman doing something. I don't know what.